Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, the biggest takeaways from Las Vegas. What's the ceiling for Joan Beringer, our TSJ, Rob Dillingham, Jaylen Clark ready for rotation minutes next year? It's all coming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today, we are putting a bow on Las Vegas Summer League. It is over. We are officially into the NBA offseason, but in order to put a bow on it, what are the biggest takeaways, right? What do we look at what happened in Vegas? The Wolves went 4-1. We saw 3 really good games from Terrence Shannon Jr. We saw 4 up and down games from Rob Dillingham, Jaylen Clark. Joan Beringer had one awesome game and then some more pedestrian ones. What do we take away overall as we go into the rest of the offseason as the Wolves are still looking to fill their roster? Did we learn anything about potential end of the roster additions that played on the Vegas Timberwolves? So all that today. And then later this week, we'll do a little bit, actually a lot more end of the roster stuff. But today I want to focus on really wrapping up Summer League for what it was over the past couple of weeks here. First of all, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. All right. Let's start with Joan Beringer. Joan Beringer, of course, the Timberwolves' first-round pick this year, 17th overall pick. And but what I'm going to do, actually, first, is really just go through, I would say, from the biggest question marks coming into Summer League, like what were we looking for, to the more lesser ones or maybe less consequential ones. But I want to start with the biggest things, which is this year's first-round pick, and then it's the guys who are on the roster who were first-round picks last year, and Jaylen Clark, second-round pick a couple years ago, the guys that are actually fighting for a rotation role with the big club this year. So those, to me, are the headlines here, and that's where I want to start. Beringer did not play in the fifth game. None of the guys we're going to talk about here in the first segment did. The Wolves were not in contention for the Summer League title, mostly an injury risk mitigation thing. And then also, you want to end on a positive note. You don't want to end on a negative note. And so you kind of wrap it up while you're ahead, right? Now, Beringer, you could argue he regressed, which is a really aggressive word to use. And I don't want to say got worse. It was 4 games, right? Like we're talking 4 games in summer in Vegas. So let's not overreact to anything. But his best game was the first game. So again, I don't overreact to the fact that he was better and less good in his fourth game, better at the start. And I also don't overreact to the first game in and of itself. And I don't think, well, at least what I said on this show, and I think what a lot of the discourse was around Beringer's debut in Summer League, I don't think it was outrageous. I still think that's my takeaway. I think my takeaway on Beringer overall is the ceiling is immense. I think he could be a star in this league. He's got the skills, the tools to do it. He's only 18 years old. He's massive. He's got a huge wingspan. He's ultra athletic. And I go back to what I said when they drafted him, and then especially in the wake of that first game in Vegas, the instincts and the feel that he has for somebody that has only played basketball, I know we've all heard this, for less than 4 years and is only 18, is just incredible. The understanding of where to be and when. And the fact that he opened Summer League with an 11.8 rebound, 6 block performance and only 2 fouls committed in 22 minutes, 23 minutes was incredible. And then after that, the blocks kind of waned a little bit. He had 1 in the next game, 2 in game 3, and just 1 in game 4, but he had at least 1 block in every game. The one thing that I would keep an eye out for, and again, red flag is a really aggressive term I'm not trying to be too hot takey here. Like, if you listen to the show, I'm pretty measured in my takes on stuff. So I use red flag. Let me throw a caution flag for using the phrase red flag, because it's not a massive deal. It's something to keep an eye on. That's what Vegas tells us. It's one of the tools in the toolbox. Game 1, he had 6 blocks, only committed 2 fouls. Game 2, he only committed 2 fouls. Game 3, he committed 7 personal fouls. Remember, you need to commit 10 to be disqualified in Summer League. And then in game 4, he had 7. He had 7 in each of the last 2 games. So he went from 2 fouls, 2 fouls to 7 fouls, 7 fouls. Now, I think it was the third game maybe that was officiated kind of really wacky. I think it was that Suns game or fourth game, excuse me. Maybe it was the Rockets. Which one was it? Was it the Rockets game? Was that game 3? No, it was the Pistons game. I don't know. One or two of those games in there were officiated really weird, like super physical, tons of free throw, or sorry, not physical, a lot of free throws, a lot of personal fouls called. And I think he was a little bit victim to that. But it's obviously something to keep an eye on with a young player without a ton of experience and a big who's being asked to do a lot of different things. I actually liked what I saw from him on the perimeter when he was in switches and was guarding a little bit. He was more showing and hedging than he was switching. But I thought the feet looked good. I thought the position of his hands was good. It was really when he was going to block shots, which again in game 1 looked great, but he was just a little handsy. The offhand, I think in general, I saw a lot of instincts where both hands were going up to block shots instead of, because a lot of times what happens with young bigs is they go to block a shot with their strong hand and their other hand is pushing, right? Or they're getting a body foul because they're aggressively going after the block. We saw a couple of those. Those are things to keep an eye on. But again, the instincts to be in the right place at the right time were largely there. The mobility on the perimeter when he was showing and hedging was very impressive. And I think the instincts on the glass and the offensive glass specifically is what really impressed me. In that first game, he had 3 offensive boards. He had 5 in game 2. So game 2 wasn't talked about as much because game 1 was so great. But looking back on it, that wasn't a bad performance. 7 and 7, 7 points on 3 shots, was 3 or 4 at the line, had 3 assists and a block, only 2 fouls committed in that win that the Wolves got over Denver in game 2 of the Summer League. So like overall, all this did was excite me more about Berenger's upside. I think the sky's the limit. I think there's a legit ceiling there that's a legit high ceiling, I should say. And that coupled with him not playing, like I don't think there's any chance. He's not in the rotation. Like he just won't be. But I wonder if what he showed and perhaps what he showed in Summer League training camp, if you will, and practices and stuff, if he showed enough that the Wolves may shift what that strategy could be with their final roster spots. Like, are they less inclined to go out of big because they're like, hey, look, in an emergency case, back-to-back, dudes are out, whatever, we could put Beringer out there for 12, 14 minutes and he can hold his own and we're not going to ruin his development by putting him out there with a bunch of grown men. I don't know. Like, again, hear me when I say this. He's not going to play rotation minutes. There's no chance. They don't need him to. They don't want him to. They shouldn't want him to or need him to. But if there's 1 or 2 games this year where it's like, oh, shoot, back-to-back, Rudy's banged up, somebody else is, Nas or Randall's already hurt, like, all we have is Jesse Edwards, right? Like Jesse Edwards and one other big and Josh Minot's gone too, right? Like he was kind of the backup 4 in a sense. So what do you do? Like, is there enough here where they add a guard and a wing instead of another big? I still think they're going to add another big, but it's worth saying those words out loud. It's worth asking the question, is there a chance that they're like, all right, Beringer is we've seen enough from him that we could, in a pinch, in an emergency situation, we could turn to him and he won't be embarrassed and we'll have a shot to win a game and it won't ruin his development when he gets, 4 fouls in 2 minutes or whatever. I think there's a chance. I think there's a chance that that's entered into the calculus for Tim Connolly and Chris Finch and the rest of the Wolves leadership. That is how good he looked in the first couple of games in the Summer League. And obviously we saw the flip side of it in the final couple where he was a little bit, certainly more foul prone. He was less available offensively, not as active in transition, I don't think either. So all things to consider. Next, I want to dig into the 3 guys who did see rotation minutes at one point or another last year. Terrence Shannon Jr., Rob Dillingham, Jaylen Clark. Obviously, TJ Shannon stood out the most of that trio, but I want to kind of look at all 3 of them, and then we'll talk a bit about some of the other guys. We'll talk Jesse Edwards, some of the end of the roster possibilities for the Wolves based on what we saw in Vegas. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. When I started using Monarch, it was incredible. Like right away, I noticed how much I was spending on food, period. Takeout. Yes, food delivery was ramped up maybe more than it should. And that's probably the easiest place to cut back, but just spending on food. Maybe for you, it's subscriptions. It's super easy to have that 1 or 2 subscriptions that you don't use. Maybe it's a streaming service or something else. And all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, I paid for this again this month. It adds up to more than you expect. But if you want to see it all in one place, Monarch Money is the best place to allow you to do that and make the right choices for your own finances. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKDOWNNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKDOWNNBA for half off your first year. All right. Let's talk rotation guys. Let's talk the guys who are currently on the Timberwolves roster and or have been on the Wolves roster, were on the roster last year and played rotation minutes. And let's start with TJ Shannon. Terrence Shannon Jr. was fantastic in Summer League. Played only in the first 3 games. They didn't want him to play in the back-to-back game, and then he didn't play in the inconsequential consolation game, if you will. Let's just go through what he did. Game 1, 20 points on 14 shots. 9 assists, 6 boards, 2 steals in Game 1 for Terrence Shannon. Was only 2 of 9 on threes. But guess what? He was 4 of 5 on twos, good in transition as always, got to the line 6 times, made all his free throws. And the headline there was the 9 assists to 3 turnovers. And one of the big questions coming into Summer League was, can TJ Shannon show any level of facilitation for others, right? Can he facilitate the offense? Can he essentially play as secondary playmaker? That's a huge thing that's been vacated with the Nickeil Alexander-Walker, with him leaving, right? That role was essentially the backup point guard. And the Wolves have not had a true backup point guard in either of the last 2 years. 2 years ago, Jordan McLaughlin was kind of third string and ended up playing a little bit backup point guard. Obviously wasn't on the team last year, but they went into the year thinking Shake Milton can run our second unit. He's not a point guard, right? Last year, it was Nickeil. Like, he was the guy. And after Shake was traded 2 years ago, it was basically Nickeil. I mean, I guess they had Monte Morris at the end of the year, but they landed on, look, Nickeil's the guy. He can run the offense. TJ Shannon doesn't naturally have quite that same skill set. And Nickeil's not a natural point guard either, but he obviously, as I've always said, he was able to play one on TV. He was able to do it well enough to initiate offense, facilitate, etc. Can TJ Shannon do that? I didn't think, I'm still not sure he can. I was a bit dubious, and I'm always a fan of having at least another point guard on the roster when things break down, when things go sideways. I understand the upside and the attraction of having a bunch of dudes that are big with size that can score and play defense, and you don't want to have a guy out there who teams are going to target defensively. My counterpoint to that would be, like, at this point, that's what Mike Conley is. I know he's big, like he's 6'4", good wingspan, and he's smart, but he's still somebody that's the smallest guy on the floor by far, and teams are hunting. So I don't understand what the drawback would be to bring in another point. And this is a topic for later this week because the Wolves still have a roster spot to fill, and they could bring in a guard, right? All that to say, back to TJ Shannon, can he do some of this stuff? Can he be a reasonable facsimile of what Nickeil was, who was also just being a reasonable facsimile of a point guard? Can he be that for the bench? In Game 1, it certainly looked like he could. Game 2, no turnovers, only 3 assists. It was more of a high-volume scoring night. He again struggled. I shouldn't say struggled. He was okay from the outside. High volume, 5 of 14, 3 of 5 on twos. Again, great in transition. No turnovers to 3 assists in that second game. Game 3 was his most efficient scoring night, but he forced the issue a bit on offense. He had 7 turnovers and only 3 assists in the game. But he had 24 points on 9 shots, which is just absurd. That's like 2.5 points a shot, which is absolutely unheard of, or 2 2/3 points a shot, I think, if my quick math is right. Perfect 3 of 3 on threes, 9 of 9 at the free throw line. A terror in transition, which is a term I started using 13 months ago when they drafted him. TJ Shannon is a terror in transition, and he was that throughout Summer League. But Game 3 especially, the offensive efficiency was off the charts. Did not play in Game 4. So his last game that he played was a high turnover, high scoring, but very efficient night. So overall, you look at his Summer League performance, and he had 15 assists. And again, we're combining all these 15 assists to 10 turnovers, which honestly, it's not a good ratio for a point guard. But if you're asking a guy like TJ Shannon to initiate some offense, and mind you, he was doing this, like he was on the floor with Rob Dillingham. You know, I guess Rob Dillingham was really the only point guard on the summer roster that really saw minutes. Like CJ Fulton didn't play ever with TJ Shannon. Amari Bailey's not a true point guard. We'll get to that. Tristan Newton's not a true point guard, but he was neither is Jaylen Clark. So TJ was being asked to do a bit of this. He wasn't like literally running point guard, but he had the ball in his hands a lot and was being asked to make decisions. And he showed me enough to make me think, like, I came into Summer League. If you've been listening to the show, I've been saying, look, they're going to rebuild the Nickeil minutes in the aggregate, or they're going to backfill the Nickeil minutes in the aggregate with TJ Shannon, Rob Dillingham, and Jaylen Clark. I think TJ Shannon almost has that role. Like, if they go from an 8 to a 9-man rotation, there's obviously going to be 2 guys, but I think TJ Shannon almost gets most of those Nickeil minutes. And then you patch in somebody who's going to have the ball in their hands a bit more, like a Rob Dillingham, probably. And then depending on the matchup, you may go to 10. I mean, Chris Finch has mentioned that in the offseason. Does he go to 10 in the rotation? And then that would mean all 3 of these guys would get a chance to play. But TJ Shannon did more than what was asked. He showed the ability to score efficiently. He showed the ability to distribute and facilitate, and played hard in the 3 games he was in, was the best player on the floor in all 3 games on either team, was easily one of the best players in Summer League. Really outstanding from TJ Shannon. The other 2 rotation guys looked mostly like more of the same. So like for Rob Dillingham, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, across the 4 games he played, he scored 3 more points than he had shot attempts, which is not the picture of efficiency. So in other words, a little more than 1 point per shot. Again, not the picture of efficiency. The 3-point shot, like, it was good when he shot it, but what was it? Game 3, I think he didn't attempt. Yeah, game 3, he attempted 17 twos and 0 threes. And of those 17 twos, he only made 7 of them. 7 of 17 on twos is not good. There was a lot of mid-range stuff there that I'm sure the Wolves said, hey, man. And then he had a 1-to-1 assist to turnover, 4 assists, 4 turnovers in that game. That was an issue. The 4th game he played, though, the 4th and final game, was really good. 23 points on 20 shots. He did only shoot 1 of 6 on threes. But he was 8 of 14 on twos, which is obviously a more palatable number. Got to the line 4 times, 7 assists to only 2 turnovers. Like, that is a very good Rob Dillingham performance. The first 2 games were more of a mixed bag, clearly. He had, 15 points on 14 shots in game 1, 6 assists to 7 turnovers. Game 2, 15 points on 15 shots, 9 assists to 4 turnovers. So you can handle that line, right? That's just, at this point, who we believe Rob Dillingham is a high-volume scorer with the ability to make these highlight reel passes. But can he hit the singles and doubles, or is it always going to be home runs, right? Like, that's the question with Rob Dillingham. He clearly sees the court very well. It's the decision-making and when he's calling his own number and how he's calling his own number. Is it, I'm going to dribble to 18 feet, pull it back out to the 3-point line, and then dribble in and take a 20-footer from along 2? Like, that's not great, but we saw him do that multiple times. Like, if he can extinguish that, and there was another, I used this example a couple times, but in the first game of Summer League, I don't remember who the other guard was. It might have been Amari Bailey. He was like, Dillingham passed it to him on the left wing, and Dillingham just kind of stood there at the break. Like, really, the spacing was terrible. Like, you got to know, you pass that ball, he's waiting for you to cut through to allow him to have a driving lane, at least allow there to just be some, keep the offense from being stale and stagnant, right? And some of that stuff, like, he clearly sees the floor well, but it's the actual, the consistency of the execution that we're lacking still with Dillingham. And again, it's not alarming. Like, I thought he was fine. I thought it was just more of what we kind of expected to see. You'd love to see a better assist to turnover. You'd love to see a more efficient, you want him to score more than 3 points, more than the number of field goal attempts he had, right? Take the overall Summer League together, and he had 15 assists to 11 turnovers through the first 2 games, 19 assists to 15 turnovers through 3 games, and then he finished pretty strong. So he had 26 assists to 17 turnovers. Like, 17 turnovers across 4 games is too many turnovers. It's Summer League, so there's going to be more, but like, that's 4.25 a game. Like, that's too many. That's something he's got to clean up a little bit. And again, Summer League lends itself to more turnovers, but all that to say, it was more of kind of what we expected to see from Rob Dillingham. Jaylen Clark, same deal. What I'd said before Summer League is, hey, let's watch his shot. Let's see how he looks. It's going to be a small sample. Let's not overreact either way. Last year he had 95, 96 attempts from 3, and he was 43%, which is far and away better. He was never better than 32% at UCLA in 3 seasons there. One of the knocks on him was, can he do anything offensively if he can't shoot, from the perimeter? How playable is he at the NBA level despite the all-world defense? We saw the all-world defense, and the shot is kind of what I expected. It looked good. It looked like it was on point. He shot 7 of 23, which is just a shade over 30%, kind of right in line with what his number was in college. I think he's better than that. I don't think he's a 43% 3-point shooter, but I was encouraged by his confidence from 3 and also the mechanics of it, how quick the release was. I thought he was decisive offensively. I thought the last game he played was great. Game 4, which was the game that TJ Shannon didn't play, or the first of the 2 games, the one game Jaylen Clark played in that Shannon did not. He had 13 points on 9 shots, 3 of 6 on threes, 5 steals, 3 assists in that game. Like, that was a really good Jaylen Clark game. It's what we expect out of Jaylen Clark, and I don't have any issues with how he played. I was encouraged. I think he's got a real shot at rotation minutes this year with that group of Dillingham and TJ Shannon, whether it's 8, 9, or 10 guys that Chris Finch ends up playing. I think the answer is 9 or 10. but I was encouraged by his performance. All right, let's talk Jesse Edwards and the end of the Wolves roster. We'll talk a little Amari Bailey, Tristan Newton, Jamal Cain. We did a lot of that yesterday, a bit of Rocco Zikarsky. We'll close it out by looking at the rest of the summer roster and how they performed in Vegas. We'll do all that here next. Okay, rounding out the Vegas conversation. The one other, well, actually two other guys that were on the Timberwolves roster last year in some capacity. Actually, they were both two-way guys who were on the summer roster. Jesse Edwards. Let's talk about him first. And the reason why I talk about him is there's a path to him having a role, and not a rotation role, but what I've been calling the Luca Garza role. And what I mean by that is the deep bench big who plays when the example I gave earlier, like Beringer is maybe making a case for, hey, you don't need a guy. You don't need to sign another guy. You don't need Jesse Edwards. You have me, sort of a thing. Again, I'll say this again. I don't think that's the case for Beringer. I think it's too early for that, but he made that case himself with how strong he was the first couple of games in Vegas. Jesse Edwards, could he be in the Garza role? So go back a couple of years, actually at this point, almost 3 years, the 22-23 season. That was Luka Garza's first year on a two-way deal with Minnesota, first full year. And they also had Nate Knight. Remember Nathan Knight? He was on a two-way, I believe. Actually, I think he was on a standard contract that year. They were kind of the deep bench bigs. They still had Kyle Anderson on the team, though. And so he was the, okay, shoot, we got a guy that's out. We got a guy in foul trouble. He's got to play the 5 or whatever. 23-24, it was just slow-mo. Luka Garza was a two-way that whole season. Nate Knight wasn't on the team anymore. So Garza was a two-way, was converted to a full contract in April because they needed to fill the roster. And obviously he was on a full standard contract all of last year. But for the full 23-24 regular season until April, their only break glass in case of emergency was two-way Garza and slow-mo. Garza still kind of played that role. But now this last year, we saw him play, 8-10 games in a rotation role when there were injuries. Remember, Julius Randle missed a month and Nas missed a short period of time. Gobert missed 3 weeks or so, and there was some overlap in there. And so we saw Garza see some rotation minutes, and it was certainly, as it is with Garza, you know what you're going to get from an effort and rebounding standpoint. Is the shot falling on offense, and how does he look defensively, right? Depending on who the matchup is really. So there was some stuff that was a certain, like, here's the floor with Luka Garza, which is very valuable. And there was some stuff that was, oh, shoot, what are we getting from him tonight? Does Jesse Edwards have a shot at that role is what I'm getting at. And I think certainly the way he finished Summer League, I thought he was the flip of Beringer. I thought he got better as Summer League went on. And certainly he saw his most opportunity in Game 5 because of all the guys that were sitting, and Beringer was not playing, and he was the best big on the floor, period, in that game. We talked a lot about him yesterday, so if you're a big Jesse Edwards fan, listen to yesterday's show. Put up 18 and 8 with 4 blocks, 7 and 12 shooting, got to the line 8 times in the final game of Summer League. I think he made the case, certainly to stay on the two-way that he's already re-signed, and be that guy. Like last year, they would not play him, even in those situations where it was like, hey, look, we don't have any bigs, barely any bigs. We're not going to play Jesse Edwards. I think he made the case now. So between him and Beringer, could the Wolves look at this and be like, all right, we could sign, we'll talk about these guys in a second, but we're going to keep Tristan Newton. We'll sign Jamal Cain to a two-way, and we'll sign Amari Bailey to the roster. Or we'll sign Malcolm Brogdon, or we'll sign whatever guard. We don't need to worry about the bigs. I don't necessarily agree with that, but there's at least, I'm sure that Edwards and Beringer gave the Timberwolves front office pause with their performances in Vegas. I think you can keep Jesse Edwards on a two-way. I was unclear why they re-signed him, but now I kind of see it. Like, he's clearly improved. He's still not super fluid, but like the instincts are there as a shot blocker. The instincts are there as a rebounder, which early in Summer League, the rebounding was not great. Part of it was Beringer was super active on the glass early in Summer League, and so he out-rebounded Edwards. But I think ultimately we saw the upside there, at least the case for why Jesse Edwards should still be on a two-way and should be an emergency big for the Timberwolves if needed, in a pinch, not regularly, but in the Luca Garza role at some point this season. I see the vision. I think there's a real argument to be made there. The last thing I'll say two more things, I guess. So the trio of Amari Bailey, Tristan Newton, and Jamal Cain, and I lump them together because, and they're not the same, and Bailey and Newton are certainly more combo guards, and Jamal Cain's more of a wing. Newton was on a two-way last year. The Wolves have reportedly extended a qualifying offer to bring him back for their final two-way this year, but he has not signed it. We talked to Andrew Dukowitz last week. He said he believes Newton's holding out for a guaranteed deal with somebody else, which makes a ton of sense. He looked great in the final game of Summer League. He's another guy who got better as it went on. So I think between him and Bailey, one of them probably gets a contract, whether it's the two-way spot that was Newton's last year or maybe even a standard contract, depending on how the rest of free agency shakes out. I'm sure the Wolves are waiting to see, like Chris Paul just signed, right, with the Clippers. So there's another domino that's fallen. We could get news at any point if the Wolves are signing somebody, or Brogdon and other guys are signing elsewhere, and Minnesota is going to sign either nobody or a big, or they do give Tristan Newton or Amari Bailey a guaranteed deal. That's possible. I think Jamal Cain's backup option as a two-way guy. I like him. I think he's an NBA depth piece. Again, in a pinch, he can give you solid minutes and not hurt you. He knows what he's doing on both ends of the floor, can facilitate just a little, good catch and shoot guy. I like him a lot. He was not good in the last game of Summer League, but I think he's a good player. So between that trio, one could get a guaranteed deal. One could get a two-way deal. That's possible. Last thing would be Rocco Zikarsky. Not a whole lot to say about his performance. It's really what I expected. He had, game 4? He had a couple big dunks, was pretty active, was maybe a little underwhelming at times, but again, 18-year-old, only, barely played professional basketball, has never been to the States. Like, this has surely been a whirlwind for him, but you can see the vision there of him as a weak side shot blocker, a pretty good hands for his size, and good feel as you rolling to the basket. That's how he got those dunks, was just the feel and the catch on low passes, at his knees rolling, is something that, like, we don't really see Rudy do that. You can't throw the ball low to Rudy. We've seen them be able to get away with that with Rocco, which is not like a good practice for the guards, but it's a good demonstration of how good his hands are. And he's just a massive human. So there is certainly upside there. He's nowhere near ready. Whereas Beringer, it is not ready, is closer. Like, you could squint and see, reasonable NBA minutes from him, and you can't necessarily see that yet from Zikarsky. Nobody else really to talk about that would have a shot. Certainly some of these guys we'll see in Iowa. Babacar Sane, I thought he was good in his limited minutes in only the last game. Noel Eastern, kind of the same thing. He'll probably be on the Iowa Wolves. So nothing else really to note. I do want to spend a bit more time on the end of the roster later this week, as in addition to that, specifically like the case for a couple of these guys for the rotation. So we'll do that. We'll look at having a couple of guests here this week and next week. A reminder that we are still daily throughout this week and throughout next week, or throughout the month of July. Once we hit August, we'll go to 3 shows a week, but we are still daily, Monday through Friday. So make sure to keep tuning in to Locked On Wolves. And of course, a big thank you for making the show your first listen every single day. Of course, you can listen anywhere. You can watch on YouTube. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app, on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. That's really all I have for you today. Again, thanks for making us your first listen. Oh, and a reminder for your second listen, go check out the Locked On NBA show. They do a great job. Doug, Matt, Hayes, they'll keep you up to date on everything in the offseason. They'll keep you as informed as possible about the NBA through this kind of quieter period in July and August and into September. You can find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. This show is also part of the very same Locked On Podcast Network, and we are your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast. We'll catch you next time.